It started with the biggest pipe bomb the FBI had ever seen.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
It ended in a dumpster after the largest manhunt in American history.
My knees knocked so hard that I was about to answer them. That's how nervous I was.
Eric Rudolph and the rise of anger.
Domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now.
True story, true crime, true consequences for us all.
American Shrapnel, from award-winning journalists Becca Andrews and John Archibald, two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, and that is Stefan Krajisnik. This is your Monday Leave No Doubt pod. This is round 3 of the Leave No Doubt pod, which again, this is birthed out of last year. I kept saying we weren't going to name the podcast. We don't have a name for the podcast. If they win a natty, I'll name the podcast. And then I decided to go win a natty, so I had to name the podcast. And we used last year's theme as the name of the podcast, and this idea of leaving no doubt and trying to evaluate that from every facet of the Ohio State football team and the Ohio State football program, because I think this is something that can even live in the offseason. Maybe not as strongly in the offseason, because it's just, that's a hard thing to keep up. Hey, Jerry J is on a beach in Maui. Hey, Brandon Ennis is on vacation. Did they leave no doubt about their vacation? That's just a little weird, right? That's a little weird. But I do think there's an opportunity, especially during the season, to do this every single week. And the point of it is we watch games a lot of the times, and we'll try to break those things down, because then we'll have a maybe clearer vision and idea of what it was, and it doesn't feel so reactionary. It feels like, okay, we sat with it, we rewatched it, and got a better analysis of it. We'll take a look around the country at different things, especially around the Big Ten. And I think this will be a good week to start that, because the Big Ten, for the most part, has been playing major non-conference game and let's blow everybody out and figure out what we are games. And so this is the first week where there's going to be an abundance of Big Ten games to go off of. And so we'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about a couple other things I have questions for with Stefan, is just like Heisman stuff. Because I felt like Ohio State the last 2 weeks has been trying to beef up JJ's Heisman resume early in the year, and so I guess we can get into that as well. But we'll start with the offense and the major thing coming out of this game, Stefan. There's 4 red zone trips. They're not in a row. There's 3 of them for sure, and then there's another one later in the game where we're trying to figure out, is this a problem or was it just a thing against Ohio? So I guess let's start with the first one, where they get in there and they run 4 straight plays and they don't get a single yard. Your impressions on the play calls, your impressions on Julian, your impressions on the offensive line, just overall, like, evaluate that first red zone trip on their first drive of the game, where, quite frankly, they probably should have scored a touchdown at some point.
Yeah, let me start off by saying this to answer kind of your overarching question first, because I think you're going to maybe hear me repeat myself a bit as we talk about each drive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a major problem yet.
Not anymore.
After rewatching it, I'm not too concerned. And it starts with this first drive. So you're talking about the one where they go 4 and out?
Yes.
Or not 4 and out, I should say, turnover and downs. It starts with the run that C.J. Donaldson had. It seemed like there was a missed block or something, some sort of missed assignment that didn't help the play. But after that, you have the third down play to Carnell, the play in the corner. First of all, that was, I thought, a pretty blatant holding call before he got, like, as he was going through his route. It wasn't a penalty or pass interference like when he went up for the ball earlier in the route. That should have been called a holding. But that's a play where, after we watched it, I'm kind of just thinking to myself, Carnell's just got to catch that. And I don't have too many doubts about Carnell's ability to do that moving forward, right? Like we saw him in the course of this game make plays like that. He's made contested kind of back shoulder type catches like that this season. He made an amazing one against Texas, right? So I'm watching that and I'm not too worried. And then on the fourth down, I think Julian hesitated because he was looking at Carnell, and it looked like the linebacker was kind of like moving over towards Carnell's slant route, and I think Julian hesitated. But and as soon as he saw he couldn't go there, he turned away. And I think if he had stayed with Carnell as the play developed, he could have gone behind that linebacker that was leaking in and had him for a touchdown. Because as the play's ending and Julian's getting sacked, you can see in the back of the end zone that Carnell is still open. So I think he kind of moved away from Carnell a bit too quick there. So, going through that series specifically, I'm telling myself there's a penalty that wasn't called, there's a play that Carnell probably should have made, and there's a play that Julian should have made. And in each of those instances, it's not something where I'm saying that's something that we've seen consistently throughout 3 games. It feels more like an anomaly than a consistency.
Because we literally have watched Carnell Tate make that exact same catch 2 weeks in a row. So there's an element of, all right, 9 times out of 10, Carnell's going to catch that, and this is the one time he doesn't catch it. And maybe it's a bang-bang play. It's one of those plays where it's okay, if you call pass interference, fine. If you don't call it, fine. To the point on the 2 runs, the first play, I think Brandon Ennis missed his block. But also, I noticed this throughout the game with a lot of their run scheme. A lot of their run scheme, and I think Ryan Day was even talking about it earlier this week, it's designed to where, I think Day said it Tuesday, you got to be your own blocker. Like they're setting you up to, it's you and one person mano-a-mano. Whether it's in the hole or you get through the hole and now you're at the second level and there's a guy. But at some point, really early in the play, a running back is going to have to be better than the defender. And I don't feel like in this game specifically, they were that often. Because even Bo Jackson's runs weren't necessarily those moments. It was just clean blocking and then Bo Jackson's awesome in the second level. But I felt like in these play calls, a lot of these gap scheme runs that they were running, when it's mano-a-mano in the hole, it didn't feel like they won as often against Ohio as they did maybe against, and Grambling, I'm throwing that out the window. Against Texas, I felt like C.J. Donaldson was winning on those runs, even if everything else was a little choppy. I didn't feel like he won today, on Saturday, in some of those runs. And I think that's what, yes, Ennis missed a block, but on both of those, Donaldson either missed the hole that he should have hit and it probably would have been more explosive, or also he hit the hole and he just wasn't the better player on that play. And Ohio's not a bad football team, so that's going to happen. But I do think, to bring in the Carnell point, that's a throw, that's a play where Carnell just has to be better. And most of the time he is going to be better, which is why we're not sitting here going, oh no, can Ohio State catch fade routes, right? We're having conversations about the running backs. And then on the 4th down, I think the easy thing to say is Julian Sands should have just hit C.J. Donaldson on that play. But then you rewatch it, and I think I even said this in the video, C.J. Donaldson's like a block release, so it's not like C.J. is initially in the route, but then also, I am not 100% sure C.J. just doesn't get tackled at the 1-yard line. With that being said, he also had a play later on in the game where he did not get tackled at the 1-yard line. He just happened to step out of bounds, so maybe he does get in there. But I'm with you.
He did also have a play where he got pile drive at the 1-yard line.
We'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there. I think we saw the good and the bad of C.J. Donaldson on Saturday. I felt like the way you explained it, that's what I saw too, which goes back to the pick we were talking about a week ago, where it feels like Julian is such a quick processor. Sometimes he's too quick and he's not all that patient, but also there were moments, and we'll get into this as we talk about some of these other red zone trips, where maybe he was more patient and he shouldn't have been, and he was trying to let things develop. But I felt like coming off of this first drive, the first 2 red zone trips, which we can transition into the next one, I guess. I felt like Julian moved on from things too quickly and his eyes weren't where they needed to be. And then Ryan Day yelled at him on the sidelines. I'm pretty sure on the second one, as we get into this here, first play, he hits Kazmarek. All right, whatever. Ohio played zone and Ohio State ran a man blitz beater, which I think is also part of this here, is what was Ohio State calling versus what Ohio was calling, and were those looks the type of looks that can beat what the defense was giving you. Play number 2, C.J. Donaldson run. I think he should have scored on the run. I thought this was one of the better blocks of the day by Ethan Nyawa and sets it up perfectly. It's just, again, he gets to the second level and the DB makes a tackle. You got to be better. Play number 3, Brandon Ennis is open and probably would have scored. And this goes back to what we were talking about on the first drive. Because on the first drive, Julian didn't let it settle he moved on too quickly, and Ryan Day is yelling at him as he comes off the field. It's too high. You should be here. Da, da, da. I think Julian overcorrected because he's a young quarterback in his third game as a starter, and so he overcorrects in that situation. And so he didn't come off of JJ when he should have came off of JJ and recognized that it was zone coverage because they ran a man beater. And so, of course, if it's a man beater, JJ is going to be open in the back of the end zone, but it's a zone. So he's never going to come open with the route that JJ is running, which is why they have Brandon do what he did there. If you saw a pre-snap, he comes into motion and then jets back outside as soon as the play gets called. That is I would assume, and I wish I could ask, I would assume that is if the look we actually were trying to get isn't there, that's where your eyes should go. But I think Julian just locked in on JJ and was helping on getting the ball to JJ. And it's one of the few times in this game where it felt like Julian was a one-read quarterback. But again, he's 19 years old. This is his third game as a starter. That doesn't ring alarms in my bells. It just explains that sometimes he's going to do that.
Are you talking about the play where they got a little bit of pressure on Julian, where Claire missed the block or whiffed on the block?
I think he might have missed the block.
Because my reaction to that play, too, was if Claire just holds that block, though, I think he has JJ. I just think he didn't have time. Like, the way the broadcast was shown, it looked like he had JJ one-on-one, if we're talking about the same play.
I don't know if it would have gotten there without it getting picked or at least batted down. I think that would have turned into a play where it's just take your loss and get it to Brandon Ennis, which, again, Brandon Ennis is open a lot in this game, which I have a point to make about that as well.
Well, I was going to say the confusion I have is because literally on this next series, I'm going to talk about a play where Brandon Ennis was open.
Okay, so can I just say that Brandon Ennis is the new Cardinal Tate?
Acceptable.
Okay, cool. It's just there are some things I think Brandon Ennis can do better in the punt return game. The problem is we haven't seen the ball in his hands as a receiver enough to know what type of threat he is or isn't as a slot receiver. And he's the weapon that's new. And last year that was Carnell Tate. Carnell got to do a little bit more as the season progressed, obviously, but it never felt like Carnell and Will Howard got completely in sync. And I am wondering if that's happening with Julian Sand right now, mixed with all the different stuff they're trying to try offensively, which we can get into when we get to the offensive part. But to close out this drive, CJ Donaldson on a run just kind of gets, form tackled.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what you do with that.
This is the drive that also had a false start by Tegra Shabola.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's kind of the stuff where when we're talking red zone, like 5 yards, you can't afford to lose in the red zone. You can't afford to lose 5 yards in the red zone.
They just weren't clean as an operation. And then you close out with the fade to JJ against good D. But that ball, I felt like the ball, JJ's got to make that play. He's the best player in college football. But I also, if you want to nitpick Julian Sand, maybe he puts it up a little higher and puts it more outside, and maybe the DB doesn't have a chance to make the play on the ball. But the point of the matter is, we're 2 weeks into this, and any of the things that we're finding faults with this offense so far through some of these red zone trips, whether it's this game or last game, feel more about players just needing to be a little bit better than it is some schematic flaw.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. Sorry, I was looking over our notes. I think you jumped ahead to the next drive. The fade to JJ was the third one. That was the third drive that had the Keenholz package in it. I was still talking about the second red zone trip.
You're right. I am ahead of myself. Okay, so you got any more thoughts on the second one? I did jump ahead.
No, I think the false start, it felt like it just kind of killed that drive. And
right. And then the next one is when we start seeing Ohio's just running a lot of zone when they get into the red zone, and so their windows are not necessarily there the same way. Okay, then the third one, I think I just everything I just listed off is the third one. So go ahead. Any other thoughts you have about the third one?
I want to say I like the Keenholz package. I like the way that they used it there. And I like what Ryan Day said post-game of we can start incorporating some more things because Lincoln can pass. And if a defense is just going to assume that when Lincoln comes in, it's going to be that play that we saw or something or some sort of a run, I think Ohio State can have a team on its heels and take advantage of that. So I like the Keenholz package. And I think it was on the Keenholz package that we had the Tegra penalty after the play. Again, another thing where it's like, they were able to recover from the penalty, but it's just one of those things of you got the first down and now you're moving backwards, and that's another 3 plays that you got to execute to get into the end zone, right? And that's when they run that play where Jeremiah's the only receiver on the field. They got the 3 tight ends, and you get Bo Jackson with the big run, and then it sets up first and goal. And on that first and goal is where I thought Julian had Brandon Ennis, and it didn't hit.
Do you think we actually see the Lincoln Keenholz package in a matchup game?
Yes, I'll mark that down.
Okay. I don't know
if we see it on I believe I can't remember the down and distance on the when we saw it there. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it on like a second and 1, third and 1.
It
Maybe
was
not
like
maybe not on a 1st and 10.
it was like a 3rd and 1, which is
Yeah.
why they did it. I don't know. I don't think Lincoln's the best athlete that they've had at quarterback here since Justin Fields was here. But I don't think when they try to do it with Devin, it's because Kyle McCord was non-existent as an athlete. I don't think that Julian Sand is non-existent as an athlete. I think the game has not presented moments where he has to run a whole bunch because the pass pro has been so good. Because even the sack he did take on the first drive, I don't think anybody got credited with that sack because that was more of a coverage sack and Julian Sand, which I did write this down on that first play. I think on that, when he got sacked, I think Lincoln would have scored.
Yeah, probably.
Because if you watch, Julian tries to go up the middle first, but then he realizes there's a linebacker there, and so now he tries to cut outside, and then he ends up taking a sack. I think Lincoln would have scored, or at least got like 4 or 5 or 6 yards off of that play. I think if the moment's right, we'll see it. I don't know if I'm going to go into any game being like 100% we're going to see Lincoln Kienholz in this game. Because I don't know, you're going to debut it on the road?
Well, that's the thing is maybe not Washington, but I think you could do it against Minnesota. You could do it against Wisconsin on the road. And would it surprise me if it's something that we saw in November against Penn State or Michigan? I mean, at that point, you've had 2 or 3 other Big Ten games where you could test it out to where I maybe feel a bit more confident. If they were playing Penn State tomorrow, I'd say no, not a chance.
Sure.
But, you give me another month and a half, I could see it being incorporated.
Okay. Next set of red zone is I think this is it. I hope it's 3 plays before they kick the field goal. And it's run, kind of a pass play that's kind of the same concept from the first drive. And then scramble drill. Touchdown to Mac Claire. I think that's the next one.
Yeah. That's late in the second quarter.
Yeah. A couple of things off that. I think the run was just poor blocking and poor execution. I think the second play, it's just, again, as I said earlier, Jason Day yelled at Julian Sand. And so Julian Sand's overcorrecting here. He called Ryan Day, Jason Day. He called Jeremiah Smith, Jalen Smith, and he called Julian Sand, Jalen Sand. And listen, people make mistakes. You're talking fast. I get it. I didn't think Chris Sims was terrible from a color commentary providing insight on what was happening. In fact, I think it was Carnell's touchdown throw, the deep one. He explained OU's quarter situation perfectly, where you think it's quarter, so it's too high. As soon as those safeties started down, Julian identified that. Now he's throwing it over the top. That stuff was perfect. It's just Peacock sucks. Fix your app. It sucks, and it's ruined. And it wasn't a grade A viewing experience in terms of commentators and whatnot. And the weird thing at the end, where they're talking about, hey, I know you guys, listen, you guys can leave this channel and go to NBC. Why? Why did you? We know. Everybody's going to leave this game and go to NBC. They know that already. You don't have to give people permission to do that. That's weird. It's a weird thing to do.
Yeah, it was kind of odd. I thought the color commentary was pretty good. If not for the color commentary, you would have thought that Julian Sand was being benched when Lincoln Kienholz came in. The way it was when it presented at first, it was like, all right, not what's going on here.
Yeah, well, no, because it was just really, oh no, Julian Sand's not on the field, and the tone of it was like, wait, what happened to Julian? He didn't even do anything.
Yeah, I will say in their defense, that was right as Parker Navarro was going through his injuries. So I'm sure at some point in the broadcast, you think no way, both of the starting quarterbacks are hurt now. But it was kind of one of those things where it was the color commentary was no, I think this is a package for Kienholz. It's okay, good. I will say the Max Clare play, he described it as a weird play. It was a weird, I guess, because they don't call illegal contact in college, right?
No, they don't. And so when he bulldozed over the DB, and so he's just standing in the back of the end zone wide open, he's
in the
fine.
NFL, I think that's probably a penalty against the defensive back for illegal contact, because he just literally got in Max Clare's way and Clare just bulldozes over him. And, the one positive, I guess, is the reason Clare ran into that guy is because his eyes were on Julian Sand the whole time.
Yep.
And you could see that play kind of developing, and it was a good play by Julian to kind of buy himself some more time, roll out to the right, and make that an easy pass for himself to an open Clare. And it's one of those things. That was kind of the first crowd pop of the game, where I think you and I were sitting next to each other in a press box whoa, it just got really loud in here after Max Clare scored on that play. And just one of those things where it's Max Clare is an all Big Ten level player, and I think he ended up playing 40 snaps in this game. It was a season high for him in snaps played. This was the game where I think we're starting to see, okay, Max Clare's starting to get comfortable in this offense. He knows what's being asked of him. He Ohio State knows what they can ask him to do. And you kind of think about it, all that goes, into moving from Purdue to Ohio State and being this level of player. A cool moment to see him get that first touchdown and have that kind of reaction from the crowd.
I also love every time we get to see Julian Sand do things when stuff doesn't go to plan immediately. I think that's all because, they're going to play better teams. That's going to happen more and more often. I loved the blitz pickup. I think that was great pre-snap identification by Julian Sand and Carson Hinzman in the offensive line because they did send the blitz. It's just you wouldn't have noticed they sent the blitz because everybody got ID'd and picked up. So grade A play on that one, and they get a touchdown out of it. Kudos. They found a way to finally get in the end zone and the red zone.
He did a good job, I thought, of improvising when needed in this game. I think it was maybe his best performance in that essence, and probably the most he's been asked to do that in a game this season.
He's not dangerous as a runner, but he's not a dangerous non-runner, if that makes sense.
But that was CJ.
Right. Because that's all you really need.
You're not asking him to be Parker Navarro.
No.
You're not asking him to be Will Howard.
Parker Navarro is a fun quarterback. I have one defensive thing I want to bring up before we finish with the final red zone trip that I think is important to talk about. On the non-fumble weird thing where Kenyatta Jackson had a scoop and score that wasn't ever supposed to be a scoop and score because Parker Navarro literally threw the football and all Arvell did was bat it down, which, by the way, Arvell Reese was in that man's face in 0.7 seconds. I was watching Kenyatta before all that happened. Perfect rep. I think it was a beautiful example of what this defensive line needed to do today and why, if the defensive ends don't have a bunch of sacks, it's because they've been playing quarterbacks like this for 3 weeks who can improvise if you let them get uncontained. So he literally bull rushes and pushed back the left tackle maybe like 2 or 3 yards. So he could have gotten undisciplined and tried to go after Parker Navarro. But as soon as he pushes the left tackle back, Parker Navarro notices that because he starts feeling the rush and he goes into the, oh no, not my read wasn't open. Chase Hendricks isn't open. I got to run. And Kenyatta immediately recognizes that and immediately goes into QB contain mode. It was beautiful. So I wanted to point that out because Kenyatta Jackson didn't necessarily have the stats the first 3 games. Caden Curry and Bo Atkinson were monsters. Caden McDonald the last 2 games has been a monster. CJ Hicks had the moment against Texas, and Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles have been everywhere. Kenyatta hasn't had a moment to just fill up the box score yet. And because of that, this could have been a moment where he could have tried to go do that. And now all of a sudden, Parker Navarro is loose for an 8-yard gain. But instead, he keeps his discipline long enough that 0.7 seconds later, Arvell Reese is looking Parker Navarro in the face and going, hello, I'm Arvell Reese. And Parker goes, I don't want any part of you. So just wanted to shout out Kenyatta Jackson because it's sometimes just doing your job is the most important thing when I know we're always looking for who's making the freakish plays, but sometimes just doing your job creates the freakish play. And he almost had a scoop and score, but he didn't have a scoop and score.
I feel that way about Austin Sareveld from this rewatch as well. Just a lot of things where I don't think we notice how good he has been for this team.
I almost drove the bus for him being an All-American this year. I wish I had done it because he's been phenomenal. Final red zone trip of relevance. So Bo Jackson has the 64-yard run, and JJ's very excited, and so is everybody else. That they forget, wait, he didn't score here. Need to line up and get ready to snap the ball. But they're also trying to sub because they're throwing in different packages. So I think this is a penalty born out of if Bo Jackson just scores and they can celebrate like normal, then they wouldn't have got the penalty. Him getting 64 yards, and then also you didn't try to tempo off of that. You tried to slow it down and have some substitutions, and everybody's trying to celebrate, created a world where they got a penalty. So, oh well, life is life.
They should have called a timeout there. The broadcast was saying that he was trying to, but then on the replay, the only person running down the sideline was the chain gang. I didn't see Ryan Day running down the sideline to call a timeout.
He was probably not trying to call a timeout until he realized that none of his players were ready to play the next snap again. I think they should have just tempoed it. But oh well.
There was I don't think it was this moment, so I might be out of line in saying this one. There was one moment where, by the way, this broadcast specifically was obsessed with showing Brian Hartline up in the press box. Like, they wanted you to know that he was calling plays and he was up in the press box. Like, the camera was on him nonstop. Like, more than I remember it ever being on Chip Kelly. More than I remember it being on him the first 2 games.
I felt very nosy because at some point it got to a point where, like, I feel like I'm inside of his conversation with Billy Fessler right now. He's like showing him the iPad. I don't need to see all this, man.
There was one point though where he literally like just had his hands like he was shrugging, like had just called a play and was just like shrugging. And I was like, this isn't really good to see.
No, but also they could be literally talking about anything. He could be going, "Hey, you want some fruit snacks?" Oh no, man, I'm busy.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
we don't need to see the coordinators if they're up in the box that much. We get it. This is his first year start doing that. So you do it once, you do it early, and then you're done. Keep the cameras on the field, man. They also showed the wide receivers a lot on the sideline, and there was a moment where you can see somebody handing the headset to Brandon Ennis, and I think it's because he missed a block, and Brian Hartline's about to yell at him. I love that. So, penalty, C.J. Donaldson run. It's just, it's a run. You gain some yards. It's nothing special. And then he has a play number 2 is scramble drill again. This is the play where C.J. Donaldson steps out of bounds, and after at first it felt like he fought for it. I think Carnell Tate is open on a dig route, but he just doesn't see. He kind of gets flushed out, so we have to take that into account. That Julian Sand's not 6'5", he's 6'1". So if you flash him up the middle like that, then he's got to leave, right? Because he's got to be able to see. He's not short, but he's just not 6'5", 6'4", 6'3", like the quarterbacks that we've seen at Ohio State before. So he gets flushed out of the pocket, so he never really gets the chance to see Carnell Tate. And so checks it down to JJ, and then the next play is a scramble Joe where he gets it to CJ Donaldson, where I thought it was a good fight, but it's just you stepped out of bounds, and then it's a field goal. So again, what is that? 4 out of 5 red zone trips where it's, I think, a credit to, my conclusion was they've got to run the ball better in the red zone because teams are just going to sit back and zone a lot if they don't.
Yeah. The play, the check down to JJ on the second down before you got to the CJ Donaldson reception that we thought was a touchdown. I in general am not a huge fan of that play in that tight of an area. It was kind of like the fake screen to JJ, and then you look down, and then you come back to JJ. It's like that fake screen, like you don't have a lot of field to work with for that. For the, like, even if the defense does bite, they can catch up in the red area. So I wasn't a huge fan of that play call in general. But yeah, but then again, it's like if CJ Donaldson is 1 centimeter in bounds, we're talking about this drive much differently.
And also,
it was kind of like the Tegra false start that I talked about on the second red zone trip. Like, just like you can't take a delay of game there. Like the 5 yards in that situation, you can't take.
I feel like this is the second straight pod where we've come on here if we've had an issue with something, just going because the player needs to be better. But I think that's a good place to be because you also know that these guys can be better. But yeah, that was my conclusion. I didn't like the play either, but if it was man, Carnell's open and we're not having this conversation. But OU decided run the ball. And Ohio State said, no, we're going to throw it. Okay, well, if you're going to throw it, you probably should run a zone beater because we know we can't cover you. So we're definitely not running man. And I think Ohio State was planning for man a little bit more than they thought they were going to. I think they thought they were going to get more man coverage in this game. And they did not get a lot of man coverage in this game, which is why Washington is so interesting for me because Washington has 2 NFL corners. That's not saying they're first round corners, but they've got 2 NFL corners. So they're going to try to play a lot of man. So there's some things in this game that I think might work next game, but they didn't necessarily work against Ohio in this entrance. This is going to be a shorter pod. I guess let's just close out offensive stuff right now, and then we can start talk big picture stuff.
New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins, just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag, the one you stole from your ex, or your overpriced half a studio apartment, or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar, triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a Vitamin Water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
We talked the Lincoln Keenholz thing. I think they need to figure out right guard over the next 2 weeks. It's not a rotation from a weakness, but I don't think you're getting the best out of that position between those two right now.
Well, also, I've been very supportive of the rotation. It doesn't really even feel like it is a rotation. It feels like it's Tegra, and then every now and then you randomly decide to put in Ethan Onwunyawa. Or if Tegra makes a mistake, you decide to put in Ethan Onwunyawa. And so I don't know if we're even getting to see, like, I can't come on here and say Ethan Onwunyawa should be the starter because I don't know if I've seen enough from him. I don't know if he's gotten enough opportunity there. And then Tegra Shabola, there's been the highs and lows where I'm not too confident in him right now either. And it's like, neither of these guys is really emerging, one out of production, one out of a lack of opportunity. It's kind of this, I don't even want to call it a rotation, because what they did with Serveld and Tegra and Montgomery in the playoff was much more of a rotation than this.
This is a Tegra needs a breather type of thing. So there was, in game 1 against Texas, Tegra played 44 snaps. Ethan and Yawa played 15. In game 2, Tegra played 26 snaps and Ethan played 26. You also won by 70. Right. This game, which is another game where you actually got to see what the rotation is, Tegra played 49 snaps. Ethan played 14 snaps. So it's not a rotation.
It might be 63-0 if Tegra doesn't get a stupid penalty.
Probably. Or at most 55-8 or something like that. It doesn't seem like an actual rotation. It seems like a Tegra needs a breather every 3 series, and you have the depth to be able to do that. But the problem is, if Tegra had 2 really costly penalties, Ethan has been up and down. I think he has some really good snaps, but then he has some other snaps where you're like, what are you doing, man? I think they got to figure out a way to get – it's the one weak link on the offensive line. I don't think Luke Montgomery had the best day, but still, like, in comparison to what he has been so far, Austin Serveld looks like a dude. Carson Hinchman's been great. Yep. Phillip Daniels. Ian Moore played a snap against Ohio because Phillip Daniels lost his helmet again, and they had to fix it. So Phillip Daniels' only issue is he keeps losing his helmet. So, but that right guard spot is, again, these are things that I'm not sure they're going to cost Ohio State, but it's little things that become big things when you have multiple penalties that cost you yardage and cost you field position in the red zone. And it doesn't feel like, if everybody else is at an 8 out of 10 on the offensive line, right guard feels like it's at a 4.5, and there's 2 people playing it.
Yeah, I agree. Phillip Daniels too. For as much as we talked about him, not being able to, or not being afraid to talk a little bit, and we saw him get feisty in practice a few times. He knows how to flip that switch when he's in the game and keep his cool, because this is the second game where we've seen someone try to, it happened against Texas, it happened against Ohio, where I think someone's trying to get in his face a little bit, and he's like, I'm not biting on that. So props to him.
It makes me nervous for the Michigan game though, because that game gets a little emotional.
We'll worry about that when we get there.
Yeah, we got 2 months, man. We got 2 months. Let's not put the. Listen, it's still warm outside. I'm worried about things that happen during the cold weather months. What if what if special teams is just cursed?
I thought Jaden Fielding looked pretty good. Okay,
fine. The return game. You're right. Jaden Fielding looked good. What if the return game is just cursed? Brandon Ennis finally did break one. And he looked good. JJ broke one. I just don't want him back there. I don't want him back there. And also he broke one and they had a penalty, so I had to bring it back anyway. So it did. What if it's just what if it's just cursed?
The best solution is when you play a good team, just go up 34-0 again. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Leave no doubt.
Literally. So any doubts about the offense?
About the offense, no. It's so much of it just feels execution based, and maybe like you hate to see it. Maybe some of it was just it's your final non-conference game before bye, and then Big Ten play.
Sure.
And maybe you're just not as sharp as you were a couple of weeks ago when you were playing Texas. And it's not an overreact. I don't want to overreact to it. I just think it's a matter of execution on a lot of this stuff, specifically the red zone stuff. Now, if it continues in Big Ten play and it starts becoming more of a trend, then yeah, of course, we can point to this game and say, maybe we should have paid more attention to that then, and I'll be the first to admit it. But, a couple of things, too, I just kind of jotted down as random notes of things that stood out. I think Nate Roberts has looked awesome, like in important reps. I think he's looked really good, whether it be kind of in that fullback role. There was one play where he pulled and delivered a big block. I can't remember which run that was on exactly, but he's looked ready to contribute, even if it is 4 or 5 snaps a game. Like, he looks ready to contribute, and I like the prospects of him, in a year or two being the next Will Kazmarek, just in terms of the versatility of what he can bring. I guess we got to see a little bit more in the receiving game, just because he hasn't had those opportunities a ton yet. But I think that part of the game, I'm not too worried about that part of his game. So I think that's going to come along pretty well. But I liked a lot what I've seen. And we talked about it, you and I, after the press conference. When we jot down this team's starting 11 on offense, we should jot down 2 tight ends. Like, that is, I almost want to call that their base offense right now, is 2 tight ends.
So they had a drive, 10-play drive, and then with a field goal. Here are the personnel groupings for all 10 plays and what they did out of those personnel groupings on all 10 plays. Play number 1, 12 personnel. Jim Knowles used to say this when he was here. when he first got here from Oklahoma State, the idea of what fake 12 is when you have 2 tight ends on the field, but one of the tight ends is really just a receiver. It's fake 12. It's 12 personnel because you have Max Clare and Will Kazmarek out there. And for whatever reason, it's David Adolph and Jeremiah Smith as the outside receivers. Okay, sure. Clare is lined up as a slot receiver, though. So he is a tight end, but he is playing slot receiver. And they run the ball. Play number 2. Fake 12 again. Clare is in the slot. But they're bunched. So it's not completely, it's like him and Carnell are bunched on one side, and you've got JJ on the other side. And Carnell's back in the game for David Adolph, which, again, okay. They run the ball. Play number 3, 12 personnel again. This is actual 12 personnel because Will Kazmarek has his hand in the dirt and Max Clare's lined up on the end line. So this is actual 12 personnel. And then Carnell Tate and David Adolph are now the 2 wide receivers on the field. So David Adolph, you asked me this when we were leaving. It's like, who's Ohio State's 4th wide receiver? And I think I said Bryson Rogers just offhand. He didn't play. Mylan Graham played a snap, and David Adolph was out there in meaningful snaps. So maybe it's David Adolph. They're the wide receivers, and it's a play action to where David Adolph heads out deep, and it's a play action throw to Max Clare. So that's play number 3. And so far, 3 plays, 3 12 personnel packagings. Play number 4, 12 personnel again. They're back in the fake 12 with Clare in the slot and then JJ and Carnell on the outside. It's a play action. I think they're trying to hit JJ on this play, but Julian got pressured, and so he wasn't able to sit and actually make the throw because JJ won. So he throws it to James Peoples, who then gets lit up. And then they show Brian Hartline again. Play number 5, 11. Hey, Brandon Ennis is back on the field. Run play. Play number 6, 11. Pass play to JJ. Play number 7, 13 personnel, but out of the shotgun, and JJ's the lone wide receiver on the field, and they throw it to JJ. Play number 8, that's the Tegra false start that you're talking about. It's out of 11 personnel, and it's a run play. Play number 9, 11 personnel, but Jelani's the tight end this time around. Jelani only played 5 snaps in this game, and I think that's because they kept Max Clare out there for a long, long time to get him going a little bit. Pass to Jelani. Ryan Day was not happy that they didn't convert on 3rd down. This is what we're talking about earlier in the red zone where Julian Sand missed Brandon Ennis and JJ backside. We talked about that, and then it's a field goal. So we saw 4 plays of 12, 4 plays of 11, and 13 personnel and 10 plays. And I feel like they were doing too much, but it's because they're trying to work things out and figure out what they have and what they are. So it's fine. It's as I said on the postgame pod, it's annoying, but it's a necessary thing. But also, I want to see them have a 10-play drive where they do this again. Just to see if Washington can I want to see Washington match it again. Because I don't think Ohio clearly could match it. I want to see if Washington and other Big Ten can match a team who can have 4 straight plays of 12, go on to 11 for 2 plays, and then go to 13 and then 2 more plays in 11.
That's like one of those sequences where the defensive coordinator and the position coach are kind of staring at each other on the sideline being like, what just happened?
Yes.
Like, what did we just deal with?
But also, I hope they don't do this against Brett Bielema because he's going to try to do that thing he always does to kind of scam the system a little bit.
There's going to be delay a game like none other.
Yeah, so I wonder if the Illinois game we see a lot of tempo. But okay, that's offense. I don't have anything else on the offense. The defense was awesome, so we're probably not going to talk about that today. I want to dive into the defense at some point, but it's just we're waiting on the right game to do that. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk Julian Sand. I have a very simple question I want to ask Stefan, and then also talk some Heisman stuff here on Buckeye Talk.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
We're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik. It's the Leave No Doubt pod where we're asking the simple question every week. Did Ohio State leave no doubt on the football field? Stefan, tell me why Julian Sand... Sorry. Tell me why Jalen Sand is not the best quarterback in college football.
The only at this point, it feels like the only reason you wouldn't say that is because he hasn't had a big game against a big level opponent yet. And I know what you're going to say, and I agree with you that the Texas game was that. But from the outside perspective, people are going to look at the box score and say that wasn't a great game by Julian Sand, and they were conservative because they didn't trust Julian Sand. That is probably a wrong narrative, but that probably is a narrative of why, a guy like John Mateer is the Heisman favorite right now, because he did it, in a way that Oklahoma utilized him a ton against Michigan, and he did it on a big stage, right? Why a guy like Garrett Nussmeier is getting some hype because he played pretty well and had more on his play in a big stage against Clemson, who actually might not be that good. So I'm with you. I'm very much in on the Julian Sand. I was calling him special and praising his accuracy on our podcast yesterday, and I still back up all that. Not this upcoming Saturday of Ohio State's bye week, but when Ohio State is at Washington, is actually a really interesting weekend because the Big Ten matchups are Julian Sand versus Damon Williams, Drew Aller against Dante Moore, and Luke Altmaier against Jaden Mayava. Those are probably, and Fernando Mendoza somewhere in that mix as well, but those are some order of the 6, 7, 8 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And a lot of them are about to go head to head and kind of start to separate each other. And right now, I think Julian Sand's at least been playing like the best. And because when you cover the team and you're in it more, right? You're watching against Grambling, and on the surface, you're saying, okay, he had a big game against Grambling State. I don't care. But when you rewatch the game, you're like, that's a pass that's getting completed against Georgia. That's a pass that's getting completed against Miami or Texas or, whatever teams are in the top 10, with great defenses. You're confident that those plays get made because of the accuracy. I can't stop harping on the accuracy because it is so special. And it's not just, we hear so much accurate quarterback, it's just short yardage, game manager, things like that. He is accurate anywhere on the field. And that is really hard to find in college football. Also, the broadcast, every broadcast of Ohio State's 3 games so far, but specifically the Peacock one, they had that great kind of corner of the end zone camera that was zoomed in on Julian, and you're seeing him go through the reads one by one by one by one. And that's the type of stuff where when someone's struggling in the NFL, they're showing you how they're not going through those reads. And when they're playing well in the NFL, they're showing you on Sunday Night Football how someone is going through those reads. And that is what Julian Sand's doing right now. And it's almost hard to do that just instinctively because your first read is Jeremiah Smith and your second read is Carnell Tate. So it would be so easy for Julian to just do a couple, no one would blame Julian Sand if he was a 1-read, 2-read quarterback.
Sure.
It's hard to blame him for that because of the weapons that he has. And yet he's still patient enough to go through these reads like that. He doesn't play I'm not even calling him a redshirt freshman inexperienced quarterback anymore because he doesn't play
If Arch Manning against Ohio State, San Jose State, and UTEP had Julian Sand's stats and looked the way he looked, what would we be saying right now?
He'd be the Heisman favorite. If not the favorite, then second to John Mateer.
Okay. I think we'd be ready to give him the award. Who cares what happens the next? See, he was already the Heisman favorite.
If his name was Julian Manning.
And I don't want to put that much on Arch Manning, but Arch Manning had 10 straight incompletions at one point on Saturday, right? Arch is, and you and I talked about this. Arch is the quarterback who came into that first game with all the hype, while Julian Sand was just the Ohio State quarterback. And I think because Julian Sand is playing with JJ, and this is where we can bring the Heisman Trophy part of this, I think Ohio State, they didn't have to have a reverse 17-yard run for a touchdown to JJ. They did not have to do that. Okay, the day was over with. They did not have to do that. But JJ needs stats because right now he's their best Heisman Trophy candidate, and he's still a wide receiver who relies on others for him to get his stats. So I get why you did it, because you need the stats. But Heisman Trophy voters are dumb. AP voters are dumb. All of us are dumb. And we just a lot of us take things by face value. I don't. I put a lot of work in this. I went to bed at 5:30 last night because I kept going back and forth about spots 20 through 25 in my AP ballot. It was maddening. I literally closed my laptop, laid my head down, and went, I don't like that, I'm going to change it. If Julian Sand, coming off of what his actual stats were in that Texas game, had spent the next 2 games, these are Arch Manning stats since the Ohio State-Texas game, 19 of 30 for 295, 4 touchdowns and an interception. And then against UTEP, 11 of 25 for 114 and a touchdown. If those were Julian Sand's production numbers the last 2 games, how would we be talking about the quarterback position?
I think the Lincoln Keenholz package would be, people want to be much more than a package.
Right. So this idea of competition, like who you're playing every week, it matters some. I'm not going to devalue it at all, right? But like numbers are numbers sometimes, man. DJ Lagway threw 5 picks in his first big boy game. And that was after he'd already lost to USF the week before that. John Mateer, good point. Great win against a true freshman quarterback who Michigan put too much on his plate. I want to see Maeva against somebody for real, and he's going to get that here in the next couple of weeks. But I like what he's bringing to the table. It seems like Lincoln at least has quarterback going for him again. We'll see if he has everything else going for him, but at least quarterback, he seems to have figured that out again. Dante Moore getting to sit behind Dylan Gabriel has done him some good. That dude is 4 touchdowns away from tying what he had in the full season at UCLA 3 years ago, which, speaking of UCLA, oh boy, again, the grass is not always greener. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen.
If you were hoping to see Deshaun Foster at the Horseshoe, you will not be doing it.
You will not. I don't even know how many of those players you'll be seeing at the Horseshoe because that 30-day window is open now. Julian Sands' numbers, some of the numbers the numbers that matter for quarterbacks. I think counting stats, some of that is like what's your offensive scheme and whatnot, who you're playing, how long you're playing. Yards per attempt, he's 3rd in the country and 2nd in the Big Ten with 11 yards per attempt. Quarterback rating, 199.76. That's 3rd in the country and 2nd in the Big Ten. The guy he's behind in the Big Ten is Maeva with all these things. Throwing it around the yard. His completion percentage is behind Carson Beck at 78.9. That's 2nd overall in the country, 1st in the Big Ten. His PFF grade after last game, which was his highest grade of the season somehow, even though he had 1 incompletion the week before that, but sure. 87.6, that's 13th amongst quarterbacks who have played at least 70 snaps. His PFF passing grade is 90.1. That's 5th amongst quarterbacks around the country who have played at least 70 snaps. He's got 3 big-time throws. A lot of those came this past weekend. Only 2 turnover-worthy throws. So I don't think they viewed his – I think the first interception, that's a turnover-worthy throw. He shouldn't have thrown that ball, but it's whatever. And then his NFL passer rating, I love that PFF takes that into account of like, if he were playing in the NFL based on how he played right now, what would you rate him to? That's 8th in the country. That's 3rd in the Big Ten. Right? His numbers, the efficiency numbers are all there. So I'm with you. I get it. If you want to wait for more data, I'm choosing to no longer wait for more data and decide to say, I think Julian Sand is the best quarterback in the Big Ten, possibly in the country, and he's about to spend the next 2.5 months proving me right. And I don't think it's wrong to want to wait on that. I'm just choosing not to wait on that because he is doing things I have not seen. And since the last time Ryan Day had a California quarterback starting for him at Ohio State.
Makes for an interesting conversation in New York if Julian Sand is the best quarterback in the country.
Do you think he can be a better Heisman Trophy candidate than Jeremiah Smith?
I mean, it's tough. It's tough because Jeremiah does have the name recognition as a receiver to be in that mix, right? That's an important piece in all this. But the way he gets Carnell involved would suggest that maybe that could happen, right? Maybe Carnell can feast off of some stats that otherwise would be going to Jeremiah. And maybe for that reason, Julian ends up being the one benefiting from having, 2 first-round receivers out there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if the voting were to happen, like if tomorrow they had to send 4 people to New York, I think JJ would go, and I don't think Julian Sand would.
I agree.
But I think by the end of November, they could both be firmly in that conversation.
The Heisman Trophy conversation has fundamentally changed over the last 3 weeks because a lot of the teams that we thought had quarterbacks who were in it are no longer in it. Right? K Klubnik's not winning the Heisman Trophy. Arch Manning's not winning the Heisman Trophy. Ty Simpson's probably not winning the Heisman Trophy. Drew Aller's not winning the Heisman Trophy. So it's
Lagway and Sellers are probably out.
Lagway, Seller is definitely out because he's not playing anymore this year. And Lagway, I mean, you just do 5 picks. Yeah. Not only did you lose the Heisman Trophy, I think your head coach might lose his job. So it's the room for a team to get to is there. Now the question is, does one take from the other? So maybe they both get there, but neither one of them wins the award. One other thing I wanted to point out about Julian Sand before we talk about some Big Ten games this week, he had a throw to Claire on the sideline where he essentially just floated over Max Claire's head, where it became a situation of, okay, Max, if you catch it, cool, but if not, it's going out of bounds. One thing I've noticed about Julian, he doesn't ever put his receivers in harm's way, because if Will Kazmarek would have caught the ball, he would have gotten smacked. He never throws medicine balls.
There was one play with Carnell like that too.
Yeah, like he's not just throwing a ball for the sake of a completion, even if it's putting the receiver in harm's way. And Tom Brady talks about that, how that's on the quarterback to keep your receiver safe. And I think if you're a receiver, you maybe appreciate that your quarterback, yeah, he's got an arm and he can put it in angles and do all these different things, but he's also not going to get you killed for the sake of a completion. And you can sometimes you get right. Jalen McClain had a hit where it's just you made a good hit, but he's not purposely putting you in those situations. Big 10 games, Illinois, Indiana.
I'll be there.
Oh, you are going to that game?
Yeah, depending on where you rank the Hoosiers in your last poll. I haven't looked. You're still very beloved in Bloomington, Indiana, from my understanding.
Yeah, they love me out there. Last year, the consensus was everybody in Indiana thinks I'm a genius and everybody in South Carolina thinks I'm an idiot.
Hey, and here we are on September 14, 2025, and you still look like you were on the right side of that.
I mean, it's almost as if I watch football games. I got to remember, because I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can also just pull this stuff up.
Vanderbilt power. I got to hear. You had them at 19.
Yeah, I told my poll this week, we've got 3 weeks of data, and so you got to start rewarding teams who've got quality resumes put together. I mean, Indiana, there's no reason for them to not be in the top 25, but they also just have not played anybody with a pulse. So they've just been able to dominate teams. So you have to reward. I tried to reward, which is why Texas A&M all of a sudden is in my top 5. Miami's number 2 for me. Vanderbilt's number 12. Georgia Tech's the number 11. Team Illinois, the difference between Illinois and Indiana right now is Illinois played an ACC team. That's pretty decent, right?
Indiana really dominant in the second half.
If Indiana had at least played a Duke level team, I think they'd be higher for me, which is why I think BYU fans are mad at me right now because I had them at 11 last week and I dropped them because they're like, oh, because we didn't play this week, you're going to drop us. No, I'm dropping you because I have to push other teams up. It's not just about you. It's about the fact that everybody above you has played real football teams at some point, win or lose.
Oregon dropped 2 spots in the poll this week.
Yeah.
Georgia won at Tennessee. I can't remember who else jumped them. But
Miami jumped them. Penn State still being number 2 is weird to me because they don't look good. They look like they're sleepwalking through their games.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else is where. Texas is 15 for me, and they would be lower had Ohio State decided that they wanted Julian Sand to drive the car faster based on how he looks right now. But because Ohio State decided that they didn't want Julian to put his foot on the gas at all, Texas lost by 1 on the road with a chance to win the game at the end of the game. And I do think it's propping them up a little bit in a way that the next time, it's very Clemson coded for me right now with Texas, where because they didn't lose that bad, they get to hang around. And the next time they get on the field with a team capable of beating them, they're going to lose, which is exactly what happened to Georgia Tech. But you can't project. You got to let things play out like it is. Notre Dame no longer in the poll for me because you're 0-2. Would you have kept them in?
No, the best thing on their resume right now is preseason projections.
I thought about putting them at 25 simply because you lost by a combined 4 points. But yes, results matter.
One of those was at home though, and I'm not entirely sure A&M's an awesome team. I think they're a really good team, but
I agree. Indiana, what do you want to learn about Indiana, Illinois in that game? Because you're going to that game. It's that game, and it's the Michigan-Nebraska game at 3:30. I think if you're an Ohio State football fan, if you want to watch for the sake of understanding what's coming down the road here, I think Maryland-Wisconsin at noon, because Maryland's got a pretty decent quarterback, and let's see if Wisconsin can bite about, because Alabama just might be that much better than Wisconsin, that you want to see Wisconsin in some Big Ten games. Michigan, Nebraska at 3:30 if you want to hate watch Michigan and hate watch the guy you thought was going to be a starter one day, but also learn a little bit about both of those teams. And then obviously the night game from a Big Ten perspective is going to be Illinois, Indiana as like the highlight, unless you're a sicko and want to get an early jump on Washington. What do you want to learn about Indiana, Illinois, other than the fact that you're there to have a good time?
Yeah, Washington and the Apple Cup, that's always a blast, even though I think Washington should win that one pretty easily. You got Michigan State, USC, the late game, the 11 p.m. game, if you're into that kind of stuff. That actually, I think, is an interesting game because I'm starting to be interested in what USC could be in the Big Ten picture this year.
Yeah.
And this happened last year where I started wondering what they could be in the Big Ten picture, and they got punched in the mouth by Michigan and never responded. So I don't know if Michigan State can do that to them, but I know they have Michigan down the road, and Michigan is like the perfect team of, hey, we're going to punch Lincoln Riley's team in the face, and they're not going to respond to it. So I'm holding out before I buy in on USC. You know, the Illinois Indiana game from an Ohio State perspective, I'm very intrigued to see. Indiana, I think, has a strong passing attack, and I think they have good receivers. Elijah Surratt obviously being kind of the name that everyone's going to recognize. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see this Illinois secondary against them because I think Indiana's going to try to attack it a bit. And let's see how Illinois handles it because that is obviously an area where Ohio State can dominate if you have any semblance of weakness.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an area, if you're an Ohio State fan watching that game, where to watch. And on the flip side, too, Illinois was pretty dominant in that second half against Duke. There were times in that first half where their offense looked a little clunky. And I'm interested to see where their offense is now. You know, how much of that was just Duke fading in the second half and maybe Duke's not that good versus how much was it, you know, Illinois' offense not being great. I don't know. I'm pretty high on Luke Altmaier. I think going into the season you were pretty optimistic on Luke Altmaier, and obviously the experience there helps. But I want to see kind of what it looks like against Big Ten level defense because I think Indiana's got, if not a great defense, then a pretty good kind of defensive front. They can maybe get some pressure on Luke Altmaier and see what he does with Kamara being kind of the main guy there. So I'd say how does Altmaier handle the pressure from Indiana's front, and then how do Illinois' defensive backs match up with Indiana? Because I think that could be maybe a good test for what they're going to face. Not a good test, but as close of a test, I guess, as you can hope for what you're going to face when Ohio State comes to town. I think that's going to be a fun game. I'm surprised to see Indiana favored by 4.5, 5.5 as we're recording.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought Illinois was going to be favored. So for Indiana to be favored by that many points surprised me a bit. But just a general college football thing that, you know, I try not to care too much about this stuff because I think there's a lot of times where decisions are made and as a fan or as a reporter, you react one way and then you kind of look into it and you realize why maybe they went another way. Florida-Miami being the college game day game is a real big bummer. With this Indiana-Illinois game, I thought, and maybe this is the alum in me, maybe this is the homer in me. I thought, and obviously Lee Corso's not on the game day set anymore, so that's part of it. But game day going to Indiana last year was a crazy scene. And that was for a game that was kicking off at noon.
Mm-hmm.
So the opportunity to do game day at a campus where they're going to be loading up all day for a massive night game. I think I don't have the stat in front of me. It's the first time in a while that Indiana's playing a ranked versus ranked game at home. I thought that was a perfect opportunity for game day. And going into last week, I thought South Carolina and Missouri would maybe steal game day from Indiana because that was looking like it was going to be a ranked matchup. And Mizzou's been playing pretty good or pretty well. And Lenore Sellers and South Carolina were playing pretty well. And if they could beat, you know, Vandy, maybe there would be some juice for them for game day to go to Columbia, Missouri. And then South Carolina lost, and I'm thinking, it's not a great slate of games. So for you to go where Miami's a great team, where Miami is playing against a 1-2 team is kind of disappointing.
I think it's the Lagway Miami draw, but also ESPN can't broadcast Big Ten games, so I wonder how much of an impact that has. Of how many times do you want to go to a Big Ten site where then you also are like essentially promoting a game that's going to be on the channel of a direct competitor. I'm with you. That's probably, if all things were equal, game day should be in Indiana this weekend. But I think about that, and Ohio State is the exception because it's Ohio State. But this is what happens when TV rights are TV rights. Michigan, Nebraska. I hate that. I do kind of hate that Bryce Underwood's we get to figure out where you are. Games are constantly on the road because then it feels like there's this built-in asterisk that you have to put when you're talking about him every single week. I'm sure we'll be talking about both of these games next Monday, but him and Dylan Raiola checking in. We both of us agreed you take everything that we saw against Oklahoma with a grain of salt. They put way too much on an 18-year-old and they should have put on an 18-year-old, but you do want to see growth from that. You do want to see a better version than that because you're trying to figure out if Ohio State has something to deal with at quarterback now when it plays Michigan. And right now, I think the answer is we think so. But again, that's based off projection. That's not based off tangible results yet. And this is a chance for Bryce Underwood to start showing off some tangible results. Into the bye week, got some fun stuff planned this week. 4 pods. And then we'll also take a little bit of break because I think everybody could use a break from hearing our voices. I yell into a microphone a lot. So bye week coming up, improvement week for Ohio State. I don't actually think they're going to take the week off. It's too early into the season to do that, and they have a bye week later this year. But I'm sure that coaches will be out on the road. I'm sure they'll end things early and let the players go home. But in terms of how their Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday works, I would assume that works no different than any other week. We'll be back in the Woody tomorrow talking with Ryan Day and both coordinators, which I think will be very informational. This is the first time we've talked with Matt Patricia or Brian Hartline since the season has started, so it'll be interesting to get their insight on their sides of the ball and the developments there. For one side, it's his growth as a play caller, him learning alongside with Julian Sand. For the other side, it's, hey, man, Pretty good at this, huh? You did pretty well. Sorry I ever doubted you. I was wrong. You're pretty good at this. So get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial. $3.99 after that for Stefan Krajisnik. That was the Leave No Doubt pod. Talk to you guys later.
Listen. That's the sound of the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. The sound of captivating electric performance, dynamic drive, and the quiet confidence of ultra-smooth handling. The elevated interior reminds you this is more than an EV. This is electric performance redefined. The fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron.